big conspiracy. Welcome to Revolution Radio, Freedom.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie on WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on www.revolution.radio, where it's more than just traditional radio. So jump into the chat room if you can. If you have a PC or device next to you, you should be able to do that. And this is show number 403. As Mackie would say, 3 and 400. But unfortunately, Mackie is in the jungle somewhere. All he did was he sent me an SMS, or an MMS, I suppose I should accurately discuss it. He sent me a photo of jungle, 2 photos in fact, and said, "I'm not sure if I can make the show. I'm in the jungle." And I said, "Which jungle?" To which he sent me a 3rd photograph of even more jungle. And I thought that was pretty funny. It's funny of Mackie, because goodness knows, he could be anywhere on the entire planet's surface with his role. He does, travel quite a bit. So that's pretty funny. Revolution Radio is on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen from anywhere or listen it at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris's show, as Mackie said, shame on you, because you really shouldn't. She has great shows. And tonight she had Renee Colston on, and they were discussing animal healing, ET contact experiences, and plants that play music. It's a thing. So I urge you to look into what a Solaris is. This is Solaris Blue Raven, and she's absolutely awesome, has awesome guests, and she comes on in the show right before us. And it would be awful of me not to say how good her show is, to be honest. I'm really. But see, if you do not know, and you listen to this on YouTube and whatever, right? You have to go to our archives. So you can go to the freedomslips.com archives, register, get access, pay a $5 subscription fee. That's all it costs. For me in Australia, it's $5.95 because of an exchange rate issue we have, where our dollars aren't at parity, like as in 1-to-1. They're not. I think ours is 68 cents for $1 of ours is 68 cents US. And unfortunately, you do the math on that one. So it would be nice if I was getting paid royalties for something in the US, where I would get an extra 68. Oh dear. I get $1 something. I said $1.32 or something. Whatever it is, it ends up to be $1 whatever, right? It would be nice for me to every dollar getting paid. So that's 32% increase. Very nice. Mackie and I, as in Shiny Side Out, the brand, both acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. Where I live, it's the Darkinjung, and where Mackie lives, it's the Daruk people. And we both pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I add, and I think importantly add, for those of you around the world who don't quite understand what it really means, so beneath all of our 20th century and 21st century, and maybe even 19th, depending on the country, or even earlier, centuries of living, there have been lands which have had stories passed on from one generation to another 240,000 times for each year, each generation. No, actually, not year, generations. crazy numbers. They're crazy numbers to think of. That's a lot of levels of people that have inhabited where we live. But, you know, likewise, well, you know, to be honest, you can't say that about New Zealand, for instance. New Zealand only had people from 700 years ago, give or take 20 years. That's not very long. However, there are a lot of other places that go back probably as, you know, as long or even longer. It's a long time. It's a really long time. So I'm counting on, you know, 80,000 years to make my 240,000 generations. At least 3 generations within 80 years is the calculation I used, and that's the number I got to. Yeah, 80,000 times 3 is 240. Easy math. But it could be 4. You know, I suppose you didn't live long. Well, the original custodians of the land here in Australia probably had 4 generations, but I'm being a little conservative. Still, likewise, it's a lot of generations. There are a lot of stories. And they were kept solid by the type of story, the way they were conveyed, and the elders continued to ensure that the story was the traditional story. So you weren't allowed to change the stories. And I really do respect that they had like old librarians ensuring the integrity of those stories being passed down. However, this is show 403, and this is the part 4 of the hypothesis and the epiphany. And before I get to the Atrahasis epic, an abridged version, which also this is discussed in the Gigi show cycle, this one. What I'd like to do is just bring everyone up to date on the fires. This is, I think, beginning of week 6 of the fires near me. That's a hint. If you're going to Google it, just type fires near me and it comes up. A map of Australia with all the fires, registered fires on it. If you do that, you can then examine by just double clicking into the map, and you can zoom in. It's pretty intuitive. Where I live, I think there was 8 fires that joined into one large fire now, and the stories that have been coming from the fireys that are looking after them, they're saying that the headlines, here's the headlines, this is from The Guardian. Australia fires. Blazes too big to put out as 140 bushfires rage in New South Wales and Queensland. However, then it softens up and it says conditions eased on Sunday morning, but Bureau forecast heatwave as fire authorities say dozens of fires will burn across Australia for weeks. Well, it's already been, it's the beginning of the 6th week already for the one that's encroaching upon my house. The fireys say that it will reach the ocean. To get to the ocean, it has to go past, actually around. It's unlikely to go around. It's about to go through my house to get to the ocean. That's it. A lot of people are taking comfort in the fact that it has 2 major roads with a 3rd road of habitable buildings. And then it has to go through an industrial centre and then cross a freeway to get to me. But it's already burnt 80 kilometres from me to get to 15 kilometres from me, which isn't much, like 10 miles, right? Just sort of shy of 10 miles, like 9 miles or 9.5. Still coming this way. And it's jumped rivers, it's jumped kilometres ahead in the Ember Storm. It has rained leaves and ash and grey ash and black ash and char and leaves that were suspended in the air for 20 kilometres or 25 kilometres in the heat column and then eventually fall out of the heat column, baked because it's like 1500 degrees in this heat column, and they bake while they're floating in the air. So that's what's happened so far. We've not seen an ember storm yet, because it's got to be reasonably close, within a couple of k's of your house, before you see brightly glowing small particulate matter being pushed along in front of the blaze by its own weather system that it creates, pushing through, and everything it touches is already, between 200 to 400 degrees heated air in advance of it. It just dries everything out. But this has been the driest decade so far on record, the driest. So there's water restrictions for the Greater Sydney area, which is interesting on its own. I've got a water tank, and the water tank is reasonably empty. There's no saving the house from any water that's in it, because it's just not going to happen. My house is insured, so I really don't care whether it burns or not. There's only an inconvenience of not having a house in between when it's finished, usually about a year from start to finish, with all the other work that would have to be going on at the time, and all the absence of workers. Could be 18 months, right, maximum. But since it's insured and I'm insured, we could spend 40 grand at a hotel and stay there for the duration anyway, and we're still insured for that too. Not that that's always a pleasant experience, but it would be better than living in the car. So you can continue to earn. I think that's the most important part. However, we have pets, so those pets we could have a hard time, fostering out. I think that's the way to put it. But we have relatives that could look after them for us while we were absent, or without the means to support them, because hotels don't traditionally allow you to bring all of your pets. So that's a bunny, 4 kittens, a budgie or a budgerigar, a bird. I have 2 snakes and 9 chickens. We've got another cat as well on top of that. So we had 4 little kittens then, and we got an older cat. But it's not something you can readily do, right? So people have been driving their horses in horse floats, trying to rehome them because of this fire coming through, and the fires come right to the back door of a lot of our egg production. And there's a lot of I can't say chicken houses. These are massive buildings with, 1 million chickens each. And I was listening to the scanner radio that we have the emergency services for the volunteer rural fire service, who look after us in this time of need. They use a radio frequency that isn't scrambled, and everyone can listen to it. It's better than the news. It's better than waiting for a phone call that will just never simply come. There'll never be a robo-dial to get everyone out. There'll never be an SMS that's sent to everyone that lives in the area. It's just never going to happen. They're understaffed, and the current government, in the state that I live in, the state government, decided to cut that budget by 75%, because, it hasn't burnt for years, so who cares, right? Let's just save money. And the very year that they do that in advance of the financial year, now it's on fire, and everyone's staring at them going, well, it's on your head. And they just look straight down the camera without saying these words, but like, who the hell cares? I'm a politician. I'd sell my mother if I could, stay in term another year. Who wants her? Going cheap, $1. They're heartless, the politicians in my country, and specifically even more heartless from the particular. If you had a 2-party system, these are the ones that don't care about the people at all, only care about big business. And big business to them means, I should be very careful what I say. If you understand the term being rogered by big coal, that's one of them. And sell off all your assets. Sell everything. Doesn't matter, because even if it's profitable, sell it to someone. and then you can no longer make any money of it. And the only money they can make is like a sales tax, and that doesn't get split up evenly across all the federated states. Oh, crazy. Anywho, enough complaining about politics. It really shouldn't, because there's nothing except for voting with your feet. Right? That's your option. That's all you have. But in the end, when the fire comes and takes my house, even though it's made out of non-combustible materials, the interior and all the furnishings are combustible. And mind you, the floor in my house was made from the trees that I had to cut down to make room for the house to grow. Sorry, to be built. Organically grow. It just grew. Magical. I got unicorns. And I got it milled so for a secret nail wooden floor. It looks beautiful. It's out of a wood called blackbutt, because I live in a blackbutt forest, which burns really well in a fireplace, by the way. It's it's like the third hardest wood on the planet. It's incredible. Iron bark apparently is up there in the woods, and this is like second to it, and I think it's second to another one. I can't remember. Anyway, that having been said, the fires are so terrible and so large that it is. We've already held it. I told you like 2 weeks ago. They declared that we had a catastrophic level. At the moment, I think it's just high or something. I forget the fire danger ratings right now. I'll just look them up while I'm talking to you. Fire danger levels rating. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so low to moderate is pretty much where it's set, unless it's actually raining. If it's actually raining, then it's not set at all. But if it's not raining, which it hasn't rained anything significant for, I don't know, years. I joke about it, but we'll have a rainstorm that'll drop 100 mil, like 4 inches, and it just all runs into the ocean. And when it's finished raining, the land is still dry. It's dehydrated to the point where it can't accept water. It needs, constant fine rain over a week to get damp again. And so low to moderate is it's just green. It means you're allowed to have even an outdoor gas barbecue is banned when you get up the top. So then you've got high. And then it's very high, and then I think it's not extreme, it's another one. There's another one, there's an intermediate one there. Yeah, so I think this is what it is. So it's low to moderate, high, very high, severe, extreme, and then catastrophic. So catastrophic was the new one that was added because they realized that extreme wasn't as bad as it got about a year ago. And they've been determining for about a year, so maybe 2 years ago, there was some fires so bad that they were off the chart of this. And we have these chart things everywhere. So if you drive anywhere in and out of a city, there'll be, even a country town, there'll be a bushfire danger rating sign, and there'll be an arrow. Now they've got them illuminated. They have little lights in them, so it'll light up on the segment that is appropriate. It looks like a protractor. It's 180 degrees. It's a half a circle, and from the left all the way to the right are these 1, 2, 3, 6. I sound like Jeff Goldblum counting 1, 2, 6. So low to moderate, high, very high, severe, extreme, and catastrophic. And catastrophic is this new level that it seems to get to. The first time it hit was last week. And now we're here again. This week is going to be terrible. On Tuesday, once again, we're going to see like 34 degrees. Since there's no 20% humidity and high winds coming from the west, going to push this fire towards civilization. So it's been burning through a whole bunch of bush, deeper than the entire Sydney metropolitan area. It's already burnt way more than that size. It's Australia's largest city area, and it's already burnt more than that. But this is normally uninhabited or uninhabitable bush because there's very few roads through there. You can't. It's so hilly and gullied that you can't get a road anywhere. It costs you a fortune. No one would want to live there anyway for the fire danger, but that's needless to say. What we've between the valleys between are usually nice and flat, because at one point this was all underwater. Not the hills, but the flat areas were either intertidal or perpetually wet through just the raising of the sea level, and so they're all really flat. They look like oyster groves that we'd have in river, not like inlets, but like you have an undulating river, but if you had all this stuff jutting out the side that was water, every time that you went around a bend, there was a large valley that was flooded in, and the bend just kept going past them. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, that's what it is where I live, and that's why no one lives on the valley floor. Where I live, you live in the mountain area, you live on the hillside, and the valley floors are usually vacant, except for council have built cities and roads and infrastructure in the future intertidal zone. Good luck with that. That's why I keep talking about this thing, right? Every flat area that's around about 2 meters above sea level is going to be inundated. Just forget it. It's going to happen. So this is really bad. This is the worst I've seen in my lifetime, and there aren't. These fires are breaking records that we've had, and they're worse fires than would have normally been, undertaken or occurred if the traditional owners were doing this is their farming method. You burn it, all the new stuff that grows, because it all germinates because of the fire. It's learnt over 80,000 years what to do. And the blank forest is only blank until it rains. The moment it rains, it just springs to life, right? And all of the trees, it's not like a pine forest that burns to the ground and there's absolutely no trees left at all. These trees are so hardy that they burn all of the foliage, all the leaves, right? And all the bark is designed to perpetually shed its bark, perpetually. And so like our skin renews and always giving off old skin, well, that's the same as the trees. The trees are doing the same thing. And there's very few trees, except for the pine, the ones that are Melaleuca, I think, is the tree type. Outside of those, the gum trees are designed to shed their outer skin like a snake and just keep going. So they do. They survive very hardily any kind of fire. Anyway, having said all that, the threat and what should be in a go bag, I think, is really important. I think we should all know what is required, because where you live, you may not have this emergency. And since emergencies overall are increasing around the planet, it's probably good education time, right? So you need a personal bag for every member of your family. Or if you're sharing a house with others, every person in that house needs to have a bag large enough to have a pillow, to have a blanket, well, a towel, a large towel, because you'll double that as a blanket. You need, underwear for like 5 days at least. You want to be wearing clothing that is itself not flammable, or it's got to be natural fibers like cotton or woolen. Woolen's better, but you can have something that's thin that's still made of wool. It doesn't have to be jumpers or knitted stuff. It can be cotton clothing that can breathe. That's usually pretty good. You need to have water, muesli bars, and chocolate is good, but if it's really, really hot, the chocolate's going to be useless. So if it's cold, chocolate. If it isn't, muesli bars. And you need just at least another, a couple of changes of clothes. Outside of that, you need to have not only, you can, if you have portable CB radios, take those with you, but good luck charging them once they've gone flat. They've got a really limited life, and it's only going to work when the other two are on or the other one's on. So think about how you might use that. If cell towers go down, your mobile phone is going to be useless as a form of communication. And we've seen that in other places and parts of the world where the cell towers have gone off. Certainly here, after I think it's about 8 hours of their power loss, the batteries and the fuel inside the generators and the emergency systems that keeps the cell towers alive ends, and that's the end of that. There's no more comms. So yeah, you want to make sure you've got something that can do that. So I've got solar powered battery rechargers. They're personal size. They're like those power bricks that you can get, that you can plug your phone in to get a charge, but they also recharge on their own in sunlight. And so they're usually pretty good. I took them up the coast, to Bathurst with me for the weekend, and I tended to use my phone more in the day than I would normally, and I didn't really give my solar powered power bricks to enough time to charge up, and I ended up having to use my car, sadly. What kind of survivalist am I? Anyway, but if it came to it, you need a third party contact as well. So you need someone who's not in the danger area, who's in a third party location, usually geographically separated from where you are, just like you would if you were designing a computer system. And that person needs to be your hub. So the members of your party, should they get split up, rather than contact each other, because it may not be possible, you will contact that person, your third party, somehow, any way, it doesn't matter. And then, they might find a street phone that still works. And so they call them, leave their messages with them, receive any messages, and then they're done, they're hung up, and they're gone. And you would do the same thing. You would check in with that third party, receive your messages, and provide messages, and also a new check-in time. You need to have a check-in time that's now organized with the third party. Then you're going to be making your way to the organized contact point. So you'll have pre-organized and decided where a certain contact point will be, and that is something that is going to be fire safe, earthquake safe, hurricane safe, maybe different spots if you can remember them all, but my family has one and we know where it is and we're going to meet there. That's if maybe you're not together when the crisis begins. That's something to consider. And that, the power in the area is off, the cell phone communication is down, you still have a plan. It's part of your plan. You know where the meeting place is, so you just meet up there. You can arrive early knowing that they're going to still make it to that place. And you can wait, days. You'll have a time limit. You'll sit there and wait. Because that's truly important, that if they're on foot, say something awful happened, right? And they're on foot. Okay, so how long is it going to take? I'll give them 2 days and I'll just hang out, because there's no point you leaving there and then finally they arrive the moment you drive away, or you're no longer available there, right? You've sought your secondary shelter or something. Why would you do that, right? So my father and I have a plan that if something monumental occurs, I mean truly monumental, earth-changing kind of monumental, that we have a plan, we have a meeting place, and we have third-party contact details. We've got everything that needs to be done in this exact same manner so that we're safe and together and it's going to work. Everything's going to be fine. And look, if you don't have it, make a plan. Remember, the only thing that got us into space was practice. And what did they practice? Running through the plans. What did they do? They threw different scenarios at these people, sitting there and going, okay, it's like if you go for you're in a plane simulator and they've just got a randomized generator that generates problems for you to have to cope with while you're flying the plane. Because what's better, there's nothing better than encountering something that you're already familiar with. And that's why these plans are significant. You need to have them in place, do the things in place that makes it so that you don't worry, that you're solid. If you've got young children, you want to be solid and know what you're doing and be that authority figure who's got it all together and can solve this problem, can do this thing. Kids, don't you worry about a thing. We're going to plan. We're going to get ready to walk because we're walking to this place now. There, you can be safe. So backpacks on, let's go. Got your water, good, let's go. Some people's plan are just stay and fight if it's a fire, or stay around an apartment building, or stay around a car park, or something that's non-flammable for the most part. And I know some people that live near me, and they've got our Otto, we call it an Otto bin. It's a large, 4 foot tall bin, plastic that you put your garbage in, and the garbage trucks come around and they tip it into the back of itself and leave it there for you to pick back up again. So those bins are on wheels, and you can fill them with water, and you can get a bucket, because if the water pressure is gone, because there's the fires, everyone's using their hoses, that you won't get even a drizzle out the end of the hose. So they pre-fill all these bins up, clean bills, because otherwise you're getting bin juice on you. Not doing that. And so they've got a bucket that'll fit, that's easily carryable, and then they can, then put spot fires out around their house. So that's some way of being able to fight, because at some point, and this is some of these, the scanner communications, the comms I've heard from the fireys in the control center, and advices that they've issued is, for instance, they'll read out, they'll say, there's a road name like Waratah Road or Ikara Road. They're the ones from recent days, and they said those living in Waratah Road, the time to evacuate has passed. You're not to leave your house. The situation's dangered. You'll endanger yourself and your family. Stay there, stay in place, and fight the fire. My goodness, I mean, they didn't go door knocking and say, guess what, there's a fire coming. We'd like you to evacuate if you can. Tell us if you can't. None of that. This was already too late. The fire can move so fast. Think about how fast, 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers an hour is. It's the sort of like the speed that you go through a school zone in Australia. That's how fast the fire was progressing. But the fire itself was leaping in advance of the trees by 30 to 50 meters. And I hope that you've seen some of those videos around where the fire crew, there's a fire truck, right? There's like 3 meter tall fire truck, and they're standing in front of an outcrop of trees where the fire's coming from, and they were ready to protect. Well, the fire started crowning where it burns the tops of the trees, and it came from the ground through the midsection up through the top. And those flames out the top reached greater than 50 yards high, 50 meters. The fire truck was dwarfed by it. The radiant heat was so intense that it would bubble your skin if you were exposed to it. And the guy was trying to get in the truck, was sort of shaded by the truck, but the truck's not doing good. And then they managed to get himself, and everyone fled, and he drove the truck away, luckily. Now, we've not heard any more about those poor fellows. These are volunteers, by the way, fighting a fire on your behalf to save your skin and your house. But, there's so many times that I heard, building on fire containing animals. We need a crew of 3. Get there now. This is on the scanner. And this is while we've got 60-kilometer fire front. Wow. 60 kilometers. Let's just call it 50 miles or something like that, right? That's probably what, I don't know. My maths is terrible. My conversions are terrible. Do the math. But it's, they can only, and this is what has been told to me, they can only protect so many properties. There aren't enough fire people volunteers to be able to protect all of the houses. I heard them say there was a chicken farm, an egg farm, and that they were going, that was defendable. They said it's defendable. We got, three appliances. We should be able to do that, not a problem. And then the operator was saying, well, there's a property, you may not be able to see it. It's through the trees. The driveway is, like 400 yards long, and it's back at the entrance, but it goes off to the right-hand side. Can you see it? And he said, yeah, we had a look, and it's not defendable, meaning the trees are too close to the house. There's not an open field like, of clearing around the house, and they would perish if they tried to save that place. Besides, it was an empty house with no one there. They'd already left, and they've got a building full of, like 3 million chickens, which they saved. Wow. Like, I have to say, being a volunteer and putting yourself in this much danger is certainly a thing. It's something else. And my hat, if I were wearing a hat, especially over the headphones that I've got on, if I was wearing a hat, my hat would come off to them because of their extraordinary work. And our thanks from an entire nation of people goes out to them. And think about this. Remember, they're not getting paid. They're still getting paid by, I think the government pays their exact wage or something appropriate because they're volunteers and working for the government for this. But they're not allowed to lose their jobs. The employers have, signed a thing to say that regardless of how long this goes for, and it could be the whole of summer, that person's job is still available. But some awful things have happened. So yesterday, one of the fire stations for the RFS was robbed of a bunch of IDs and clothing and, firefighting outfits. And then some dude was seen walking around with this stuff on, just walking around. Clearly wasn't a fire person because they would have been deployed. And it's the likelihood that they're going to use, these IDs and the clothing to appear as though they're official looking, real people saying, you need to evacuate, and then rob the houses. I mean, they've already stolen the gear to do it. It's the most likely thing that they're going to do. That's just rotten at this time, It's like looting. Anyway, moving on somewhat from that. This week looks to be bad, so I'll keep you posted. If I'm on the show next week, you'll know that I survived, and I'll give you another update. But I won't go on through all of this stuff again. It's only because Meki's not here, and I can't bounce ideas off him, and he can't type into the chat like I type in for him, and there's nothing to work on here. That's all I've got. Outside of that, I couldn't believe to see the impeachment thing is going ahead. Damn politicians. I liked Pelosi's response to, do you hate him? She didn't say no, which is the obvious answer. She just said, I'm a Christian and we don't do that kind of thing. It looks like her lifelong dream has come true to actually impeach Donald Trump. Despite to be honest, it was, from what I could see, he asked someone else to investigate whether it was true on his side of the fence within that other guy's jurisdiction to see whether it was a thing. Yeah, he should have used the secret services of a three-letter agency to do the same thing officially through an official channel. But we're talking about a guy that tweets off the toilet, right? So is he just an action man that just wants stuff done? Probably. I think that's the best argument. Surely the other people have done worse. Hashtag bodies, Clintons. They've not spent any of the money on the things that they told their whole thing has said that they were going to do. How can that be moral? How can they sleep with themselves, right? Anyway, I'm just saying, You know, I don't hate any specific politician or any specific party. I don't hate them myself. I think that we've just got an opportunity to vote next time, maybe, to vote them out. Like we're struggling here in Australia with Scott Morrison. They call him ScoMo. And this fellow loves to sell off assets and delete agencies of the government. He's just started deleting all these agencies and merging some together and abandoning others. They're at this point where they're not trying to admit that we're in a recession, but they've now called it a household recession, where only households are having problems, not big businesses. But big businesses have been trusting his words, and he says, "Oh, how the economy is going to shape up any minute," but the people's wages have been held back for 11 years now, and there just isn't the money. It's this magical formula of 10 years after a GFC that it took so long for the companies themselves to recover from their paranoia that it was all going to fall apart, that they've held people's wages back, but that holding of wages back has been undermining the CPI that increases on everything, that everything's just slowly always getting more expensive. And then because it crosses over a specific line, then like 5 years in, and people have to start just deleting stuff out of their life. I can't do streaming media anymore, or I can't do this thing anymore. And that I used to go out with lunch with my friends, every Wednesday, and I can't do that anymore. And eventually that just starts to slash into the spend. And when there's no spend, you end up in a recession. If people can't afford the things they could afford before, then you've got all sorts of grief going on. And that spend isn't respent again. And so these taxes that the government, or these input vectors of all this money they used to have is drying up. It's as dry as the Australian continent, to be honest. The only thing that's keeping us alive is the compulsory spending. So all the things we have to spend money on, like, travel, petrol, food, those things, the most important life-bearing things, are all we have. And the interest rates have dropped down because we're not spending. It's been caused by our lack of spend, that the interest rates are now, I think, 0.75 here in Australia, 0.75 of 1%. That's it. And they're saying, well, we don't really want to put it any lower till the new year to see what the last drops have done, but they've not done anything. And it's funny. It's just funny that the only control, the only lever that they've had to operate, rather than changing the tax system, rather than abolishing import duties or any taxes, fees, levies, or, what's it? Sure, there's another one. Rather than doing that, let's just pull this handle independently, of course, because the government's not supposed to tell the Reserve Bank or the federal bank what to do. So there's meant to be this gap, but clearly they talk to each other. And clearly there's advice going backwards and forwards. And look, our big four banks got done for money laundering. I think the bank that I'm with had 23 million separate transactions which they've found to be money laundering. And this is money laundering from a crime syndicate. This is money laundering for child trafficking offences. This is money laundering to be able to pay foreign fighters in another country against your country, like the ISIS things that you never hear in the media anymore. Wow, 23 million of those, and I think they had to pay something like $700 million in fines, which really isn't very much. That's really not much. So, thinking about that, that's not even, since our banks make billions in profit, that's not even hit their profit margins, right? They've also been found guilty of providing misleading information towards their own investment strategies, suggesting their investment strategies were profitable against others, but that they found that the information they were presenting to people was misleading, and that their investment strategies weren't as successful as the ones they were competing against. Wow. So, I mean, who do you trust if you can't trust the banks? If you can't trust the government? I wonder, you know, I'm sure I can trust my neighbours. Right? On this frontline people level, we haven't changed at all. We're still the people who do the things. We're still the people who have all the conversations. We're still the people who, you know, we drink coffee, we drink tea, we have sandwiches, we have, you know, steak dinners, we have, you know, bolognese, we might have Chinese food. We'll have and enjoy those things that make it necessary to keep waking up every morning, right? But from our point of view, except for the expensiveness, if that's a new world, the cost increases that have occurred over, you know, this slowly increasing world of CPI, except for those, nothing's changed. The governments change in and out and do things. Yeah. International taxes from, you know, large corporates don't get paid. There's, you know, new devices every year, which, you know, you just must have. I don't. I jumped off the bandwagon and did it for 6 different versions of my Samsung phone. And I'm at the 6, the Galaxy S6 still. And, you know, others are on the 10s or 11s or whatever they are now. It's not broken. It's still working. It's still the same. It's still a phone. It's still got my Facebook. Still got email. Still SMSs. I can watch videos on it. It's got YouTube. What else do I want? Nothing. Is there any reason why I really need to go out and buy another phone? Because there isn't. So those things, those extra things, just get cut off. You know, you can't really do it. And if you can, you're on a really disposable income. You know, rents go up and the houses cost more. But the only thing that I've got is my mortgage is costing me less per month. Still heaps. Oh, it's heaps. It's in the thousands per month, right? Thousands. Not going to tell you the number, but it's large. And I'll be working till I'm 75 or 80 to pay that thing off, because that's just the way it is. That's simply the way it is. There isn't any way to, unless, of course, you know, I'm able to double my earnings for some reason. I don't know. I'd like for people to be able to buy the merch off Zazzle that we've made. That'd be nice. So just labeled Shiny Side Out. That'd be nice if you could do that. But anyway, I'm not begging. And it's the fact that, you know, YouTube has now changed its rules for the COPPA laws or the COPPA laws, and a lot of people are just not making videos anymore. If you have a look at what, you know, if you've got kids, what your kids used to watch, and see if the same creators have made any more content since that law has come out, because it's not viable for them to make free content for children now. Isn't it crazy? What on earth has the world come to? That's all I can say. You see, because if you had a kids show on a television station, you're allowed to advertise to them, and they do across the planet. There's advertising interlaced into those shows, whether it's whether you see a live read or there's something presented to them. It could be intentional or unintentional. It could be, you know, haphazardly done. And certainly there's an ad break. And whether it's just simple cross promotion to another show, or it's product based. It could be product based. So why aren't you allowed to do that any longer on YouTube? Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. And now you can sort of see, if there was no money to be made by children's programming on television, they would not show it. They wouldn't cross-subsidize it at all from other legitimate shows. Like 60 Minutes, for instance. CNN or Fox would have a hard time if they were showing children's shows. because there would be no money in it, and it would be dead time, and they'd throw no money at the production values. It would be, oh, actually, that's very similar to what we see, isn't it? Anyway, there'd be no kids computer graphics. There'd be nothing. There'd be no CG. Doesn't matter. Look, if you haven't seen it, if you have not seen it, the Boston Dynamics Atlas robot is significantly way ahead. With 3 minutes left, they're way ahead of the curve as far as autonomous robots are concerned. When Google bought it, and I think it's been sold now to a Chinese company, I think, or something like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't know. Investment firm bought into it. One of the things that was apparent, that this platform would become a weapons platform at some point. You can't have something that's so agile and so human-like and not end up having it in some kind of battle. It is way better than the Star Wars, Clone Wars, Roger style of robot. It's way better than that in its agility and as a weapons platform. You can only imagine how good it would be. So, taking a comical side to that, the guys from Boss Town Dynamics made a video that's all CG. It's done really well, and they've shown us what it could be like. So I ask you to go and type Boss Town, BOSSTOWN Dynamics, and have a look at one of their latest creations. It's remarkable, and until you see what it looks like as a side-by-side with the actors and their filming and the making of, you could believe that it was real. Absolutely, 100% believe that it was real by looking at it, if they never showed the process in which they made it. Because they could have done it in such a way to make it look like it was a military test, not rather than techies doing it, but it could have been, if they had military uniforms on, and they could have done some intrigue and then let this thing go viral, and everyone would go, oh my God, the military are really doing this as a weapon platform, and then reveal themselves later on. But I dare say, watch it for yourself, and the effort that they put in for this. And also, I think they do the same people do the deep fakes. So have a look at their history, and you'll be surprised to see that at one point in the future you will not be able to tell real from fake, reality from this new narrative, whatever narrative they want to sell you. It's one of those things. Look, there's a break coming up very shortly. This is Shiny Side Out with Dave. Meckie's not available tonight. It's 4:03 is the show number. And after the break, we'll be talking about the hypothesis, the Atrahasis epic, abridged version, and our epiphany. This is part 4 of our show cycle for the hypothesis and the epiphany. Sorry to give you like the doom and gloom with the fires. I think you just need to be aware. There's the music that I can hear. We'll see you after the short break. Don't forget to donate. It's extremely important. You're never going to guess it, but you're back with Dave and Meckie's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. That's right, the #1 listeners supported radio on the whole internet. Now, just remember what that means to you. If you're new to Shiny Side Out, welcome aboard. This is a tinfoil hat zone, or it's just about to be. So keep your arms within the vehicle, turn off your personal reality inverters, and please, no flash photography. We're glad you're on board, and thank you for inviting us into your lives. So follow, subscribe, or otherwise for the appropriate social media platform, because we're on quite a few of them. And we're halfway through show number 403, and this is the 4th part of the hypothesis and the epiphany And today we're going to be talking about the Atrahasis epic, because this is one of those critical pieces, critical to what we've been able to put together. Just think about that, right? We've, in the 8 years that we've been talking about this, this is coming into the 9th. I think it's March. I do believe it's March. So in March, when we hit the 9th year of being on air, from the beginning to now, what we thought then, without all the research that we've been putting in, was different, but it's evolved into, morphed, I think Mecca even mentioned last week, morphed into what we believe today. Being presented with brand new information from here, there, everywhere, allows us then to be able to make new directions, new connections. And as we started this show off and we got to this point, we realized just how much interconnected material there was. So much so that it became overwhelming, the amount of connections we were finding between traditionally separate or isolated, siloed, we call it siloed in tech, siloed industries, so industries that are completely insulated from each other. And these stories are simple, either like UFOs as an example and Bigfoot. But there's been connections found between Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings by different people in different fields, each of them on their own field, side of the same, like siloed from each other. But then correlations started to come up, and those correlations became important because it was at the same time. And both sides of the fence wanted to deny that they were connected to the other side of the fence and then left it alone. And this still happens today. So just letting you know, maybe the Bigfoot or the Yowie or the hairy man or whatever they are in your neck of the woods, the Sasquatch, maybe they're extraterrestrials or interterrestrials. Maybe they live somewhere else on a planet. Maybe they're the cave dwellers. Maybe they live beneath the earth in caverns. Maybe they arrived here a long time ago, or maybe they took over the tech from another species that arrived. We don't know any of these answers. These are still questions. But every time we have a new piece of information, we end up with probably 20 or 30 more questions. And then each one of those answers sort of branches it out into something else. And this is where we are today. We're going through the hypothesis and the epiphany. And I'll start to read the Atrahasis epic. So there is, just to let you know, before I continue, I would like everyone to know that we're promoting the special station fundraising auction on freedomslips.com. Freedom Slips Revolution Radio is holding a fundraising auction. The start date and time for the auction is Friday, 6th of December, so it's already underway, and I urge you to go to the website and have a look. Commencing at 11 o'clock in the morning, running through the first weekend of December until the closing date of time of Monday the 9th of December at 11 a.m. That means in Australia, you've got less than 12 hours, or around about 12 hours, to 13 hours left of the auction. But if you're elsewhere on the planet, check your times. The end date to the auction is Monday the 9th of December at 11 a.m. This is Eastern Standard Time in the US. And there's 2 items up for bid at these auctions. There's the Kramer guitar, owned and played by Nighthawk, that's Mike Ringley, the late owner and founder of Revolution Radio, made in Neptune, New Jersey. This Kramer is 600 ST SD 1930. I do not understand any of these numbers, but Hawke enjoyed playing this guitar. Coming with the guitar are chords, electric guitar, and a case and a couple of picks used by Hawke. Shipping and handling and insurance is optional, and it's the sole responsibility of the purchaser. Okay. Also, if Mike Ringley's wife, Liz, may decline the winning bid if it doesn't seem fair. So just letting you know, if there's not enough, if the money hasn't reached a certain value, she still has the right to decline it. Okay, so that's important. The second one is a 3-shelf corner unit, personally made by Nighthawk in his workshop. The item displays the Lichtenberg wood burning effect he used on some of his pieces, and it measures 37.5 inches in height, 15 inches in width. Again, shipping, handling, insurance are optional and are the sole responsibility of the purchaser. Lady Horse, who's another person on this station, will be shipping this item when all the funds are delivered to Revolution Radio PayPal account. Let me just see. It says that some rules here. Okay, so we'll be using a dedicated chat room for the bidding process. So there's a chat room for this. Let me just confirm to see if I can see it. I think I'm sure it's available on the home page. Absolutely, I'm sure that it is available on the home page. What else is there? When placing a bid, you need to write guitar or shelving unit so that your monetary amount and the item you're wishing to bid for is shown before placing the amount to be bid. If you cannot honour a bid, please do not bid at all. If you don't have the money, man, don't bid. Bids restricted to continental US only, so all of those people in Australia and anywhere else in the world, forget it, the shipping's going to be impossible, so don't. Try not to chat too much in that chat room for the bids. Only put your bid amounts in, and that's all. Any bids received after the closing time will be null and void. The winner will be notified within an hour of the closing bid, so that'll be midday on Monday, US Eastern Standard Time. The winner will then have 48 hours to deliver the funds to Evolution Radio's PayPal account. If the funds are not delivered by the close of that time, the next highest bidder will be advised of their successful bid for the item. You'll lose it if you don't pay. Simple as that. And all proceeds go to Revolution Radio, less the shipping and handling fees. There you go. If this auction is successful, we may have other items in the future. Thank you. That comes from the Revolution Radio business group panel authority above me. I'm a host only. I'm not part of the management team, but that's good. Don't forget to bid. Please bid. It's really important for the continuation of the station. Thank you. All right, on to... also buy some merchandise from the station's website too. An MP3 proof. Sorry, what is it called again? An EMP proof thumb drive you can get with survival documents and all kinds of things on there which you can't tell you about. All right, now the Atrahasis epic, abridged, discussed in the Igigi show cycle. Important here because it is one of the oldest and most detailed creation myths we have at our disposal on this planet as humans. This is translated by Stephanie Daly. When the gods, instead of man, did the work, bore the loads, the gods' load was too great. The work too hard, the trouble too much. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. Anu, their father, was king. The gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels and the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River and then dug out the Euphrates. They were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years they bore the excess. Hard work night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. And we call that spoil too, by the way. Let us confront our Chamberlain and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the Lord, the counselor of the gods, the warrior, from his dwelling. Then made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. The gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads for the fire god. They flared up. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. The house was surrounded. The god had not realized. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's, ran the wrong way, dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. Iker was surrounded. Elil had not realized. Now there's gaps in here because the material had damage on it, and so if you hear a gap, that's because there weren't any text to translate. My lord, your house. Oh, and plus the gaps are because this is the abridged version. My lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running at your door. Elil, your house is surrounded. Nusku barred his door, took up his weapon and stood in front of Elil. Nusku made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Oh, my lord, your face is sallow with tamarisk. Why do you fear your own sons? Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It is against me that they have risen. Shall I do battle? What did I see with my own eyes? A rabble was running around my door. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Let Nusku go out and find the word of the Igigi, who have surrounded your door. Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the visor Nusku. Nusku, open your door, take up your weapons and stand before me. Nusku opened his door, took up his weapons, went before Elil. In the assembly of all the gods, he bowed, then stood and told the message. Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Elil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Inugi have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Who declared war? Who ran to the door of Elil? And Elil, every single one of us declared war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard, the trouble too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Elil. Nusku took his weapons, went and returned to Elil. Elil listened to that speech. His tears flowed. Elil spoke guardedly, addressed the warrior Anu. Noble one, take a decree. With you to the sky, show your strength. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, call up one god and let them cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. And then, because of the damage, it just says do and tasks. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, and while Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present, call up one and cast him for destruction. Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Elil, have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rabble? Who is in charge of the fighting? Which god started the war? A rabble was running around Elil's door. Ea made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Their work was too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There is Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create a mortal man, so that he may bear the yoke. So that he may bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let man bear the load of the gods. Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring, and let them bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked the midwife of the gods, wise Mami, which is very similar to Miami or Biami. It's an Australian Aboriginal word for the creator. You are the womb goddess to be creator of mankind. Create a mortal that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let him bear the load of the gods. Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. Nintu shall mix the clay with his flesh and blood. Then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. Let us hear the drumbeat forever after. Let a ghost come into existence from the god's flesh. Let her proclaim it as her living sign. And let the ghost exist so as to not forget the slain god. They answered yes in the assembly, the great Anunnaki who assigned the fates. I have carried out perfectly the work that you ordered of me. You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. I have relieved you of your hard work. I have imposed your load upon man. You have bestowed noise on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. I have undone the fetter and granted freedom. They listened to the speech of hers and were freed from anxiety and kissed her feet. We used to call you Mami, but now your name shall be mistress of all gods. Far-sighted Enki and wise Mami went to the room of fate. The womb goddess were assembled. He trod the clay in her presence. She kept reciting an incantation, for Enki, staying in her presence, made her recite it. When she had finished her incantation, she pinched off 14 pieces of clay and set 7 pieces on the right, 7 on the left. Between them she put down a mud brick. She made use of a reed, opened it to cut the umbilical cord, called up the wise and knowledgeable, Womb goddess, 7 and 7, 7 created males, 7 created females. For the womb goddess is creator of fate. He, them 2 by 2, them 2 by 2 in her presence. Mammy made these rules for people. In the house of a woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. Belet Ili, wise mammy, shall be honoured. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth. And when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself, a man to a girl, her bosom. A beard can be seen on a young man's cheek in the gardens and waysides. A wife and a husband choose each other. The womb goddesses were assembled, and Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10th month, and as the term of fates. When the 10th month came, they slipped in a staff and opened the womb. Her face was glad and joyful. She covered her head, performed the midwifery, put on her belt, said a blessing. She made a drawing in flour and put down a mud brick. 600 years, less than 600, passed, and the country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their racket. Elil had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I'm losing sleep over their racket. Give the order that Surupu disease. Meki says it's frost or cold. So give the order that Surupu disease shall break out. Now there was one Atrahasis whose ear was open to his god Enki. He would speak with his god, and his god would speak with him. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his lord. How long will the gods make us suffer? Will they make us suffer illness forever? Enki made his voice heard and spoke to his servant. Call the elders, the senior men. Start an uprising in your house, in your own house. Let the heralds proclaim. Let them make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods. Do not pray to your goddesses, but search out the door of Namtara, being as baked loaf into his presence. So, yeah, that's right. Bring as baked loaf into his presence. May he be shamed by the presence and wipe away his hand. The elders listened to his speech. They built a temple for Namtara in the city. Heralds proclaimed. They made a loud noise in the land. They did not revere their god. They did not pray to their goddess, but searched out the door of Namtara, brought a baked loaf into his presence. The flour offerings reached him, and he was shamed by their presence and wiped away his hand. The Sapura disease was left them. The gods went back to their regular offerings. But wait, there's more. A further component of the hypothesis is that some members of these high civilizations have survived to the present day. I'm talking about, this is Meki's words, I'm talking about personal immortality rather than bloodlines, but naturally there seem to be bloodline connections as well with the same family groups of people, ostensibly appearing in charge of running civilization, and by extension us, their chattel. Being born into power affords you, and there's 3 items here, a different view of the world, which, while appearing callous, merely reflects the position of power that is held, like we are all cattle It doesn't matter whether we're slain, as long as there's enough of us to keep the civilization going. They don't care. The view that small lives and small people do not matter. Strategic thinking in favour of tactical thinking to the point of centuries and millennia rather than years and decades. And as we're aware, the election cycle, where the first year they gift you and make you remember, then the middle years they do whatever they want, and the last year is another gift year. That's not in the notes, that's my thoughts. This would of course be exasperated by if those powerful personages also happen to be immortal. Human lives would truly just seem like ants or mayflies. And the mayfly, if you don't know, I think it lasts a day. That's it. It's born, it replicates, it lays. That's it. That's all there is. So ants to us, we don't stop on our doorstep and see an ant and want to have a discussion with the ant, do we? We just don't. So I think that's an appropriate example of how someone who is immortal, that was protected by layers around themselves, to go to the shops and constantly employ new people, living in a large discrete mansion where they don't really see their owners or their employer. It's still possible. That's what we're saying right here. So then what is the motivation for the super rich and powerful, and must have ever been through the ages, is the best question. Motivation for the super powerful and super rich, agencies within the box that have gleaned the nature of the box and are using it to their own advantage, would be things like control and status quo, self-perpetuating stability, personal immortality. And we ask the question, how do you achieve that? Well, telomeres is one. And telomerase, that's a thing that if you were to consume that, there's one way of doing it. You could effectively live forever. There was a king, I think, in China who sent his people out to find this, what was it, the fountain of youth. And they stumbled upon some towns where people just never seemed to age. And it wasn't that they had a fountain, it was that they had a food source, and the food source was food that was able to have, monatomic gold or something that they consumed that was within it. And by doing that, they were effectively staying young forever. Extraordinary. Of course, the location of that place is still up for grabs, or not available to the mainstream, because I think we'd all be there making, with our own plot, growing the same food sources, or digging it up, or there'd be, who knows, right? Remember, this is the tinfoil hat zone. All ancient and modern civilizations revere gold. They just do. You can even ask a child, right, if it's silver and gold, which one they like the most. Don't tell them anything about it, and they'll point at the gold. We have an inbuilt ability to recognize gold and that it's precious, that we need it. And that's something. And also the metals of the platinum group. And these are ones which don't oxidize. So you can have gold and it'll always be gold. You can have silver and it's always silver. You can have platinum and it's always platinum. It doesn't oxidize, it doesn't deteriorate. Because imagine if gold deteriorated, we wouldn't find any of it. There'd just be none. It would have all oxidized if it was in the ground for 1 million years. Even if it arrived here by, say maybe one large asteroid, which was just pure gold, and it went and splattered or blew up, and then, lay down over a large area, molten gold, which through the air didn't quite cool enough, when it hit the ground and splattered. Because that's the sort of that looks like the shape of a lot of the gold that's found at the top of the ground. It doesn't look like it's been ground off by something. It's not powder. the weird shaped nuggets over Australia appear like an airburst of some large golden sphere that melted. Extraordinary stuff. You know, when you splatter possibly, you know, like lead solder or something like that, and you get the same kind of effect. Well, that's what I've observed. Anyway, but I'm no expert, right? I'm told I'm wrong so often it's not funny. I'm just wrong by default now. That's it. Ancient gold mines have been discovered that date back hundreds of thousands of years. Thousands, tens of thousands, even greater, 100,000 years in South Africa. Like not open cut mines like we see today, but mines that are... Oh, there's Hyro. Hey, Hyro. Stardust Man. Z to text. I don't know how to read that in the chat room. Ancient legends speak of gods that created man to specifically mine gold, and that's Anunnaki. Why mine gold? What's the importance of gold, and why would it be determined to be so important? Now, we did a show where we discussed gold itself, while having a non-corrosive property. It doesn't oxidize and has many applications in technology today, and it does not really warrant the almost mystical reverence that it currently enjoys. All the kings and the deities were all adorned with gold back in the day. I mean, today, the Vatican and the what is it called, the palace, they've got tons of gold. My goodness, the amount of gold that they've got. No worries, Haro. That's funny. If you're listening to the show, you shouldn't just listen to it. You should jump in the chat room so we can communicate. So Haro had the ability to message me while I was on air. That's really cool. You should do the same thing. There's a chat room, freedomslips.com. Now, you can eat gold, but it still comes out as gold after its reasonable journey through your body. But you can't make weapons from it because it's too soft. It's not really good as a tool for anything. Once again, it's too soft. But it's really heavy, so it's not really easily transported when you've got a lot of it. So, did you know you can eat it? And in that text above, where we heard that the Anunnaki wanted the humans to bake bread and bring it, they wanted bread baked and bring it to the leaders. We started looking into this and we found that mana, not magical mana, but mana, or I've nearly got the other word. Oh, there's another word for it. Was referred to as an ingestible version through the baking of bread. Mufcut is the other one. So mufcut is the word used in ancient Egypt, where the pharaohs were fed bread. And you can think about this as bread with gold in it, but it's monatomic. It's a monatomic element. It's a powder. It's a white powder created from gold, and it's the monatomic gold, or monatomic elements, are made from these noble metals that I've already mentioned, the platinum group metals. And what can happen is you process the gold in a specific way, and I won't tell you what it is, but I'll give you an example of what that sounds like. And then it just forgets to be metal. It still separates and falls apart like it's simply made of, like chalk. It turns to chalk, but chalk holds on to itself, right? It just sort of falls apart and becomes separate, little clumps of atoms that forgot how to be a metal. That's all it is. This white powder is an orbitally rearranged monatomic element. So I did it with lead. I heated up lead with an oxytorch, way hotter than I'm supposed to have done. And then when I removed the flame, it popped like popcorn and turned from being metal into a white powder. I thought that was really something when I watched it happen. And I repeated the experiment. Mind you, I was at school and I didn't tell anyone because you weren't allowed to play with this stuff like I was playing with it. And I found that the powder was so fine that it would go into my fingerprint. So when I touched it when it cooled down. I rubbed it around in between my thumb and my first finger, and I found that it was super fine, finer than talcum powder. And I couldn't believe that this came from lead. It's probably not good for you. I probably have so much lead in my body as a result that, I weigh heaps from it. Anyway, so I play with this quite a bit, and I discovered that's how you did it. I don't know how you do it with gold, but I'm guessing that it couldn't be too dissimilar to that. Because one of the things we'll talk about in a minute is the gold was being found everywhere and mined and brought to certain locations. And one of those was Mount Sinai. And there was signage on the building in glyph form, which suggested there was gold there. And when the people turned up, trying to find like red gold and went, woo, gold. They had to sweep all this white powder aside to try and find the gold and found no gold as a result. And then cleaned out the whole place and went, well, I can't find any gold. What's all this gold business? Why is it I say gold everywhere and there isn't? Maybe all the people already stolen the gold. But they didn't realize that white powder stuff that they'd flicked away was the ORM, or orbitally rearranged monatomic element of gold. That place was there as a production facility to make this monatomic element that could be put into the bread and given to the pharaohs. So when you think about ORMs or monatomic gold, there's potential life extension properties through the shoring up of telomeres against decay. One word for its use I've already mentioned was mana. There's also ambrosia and food for the gods. This is specific with chosen humans to provide them with this food source. Like I said, it was baked in bread and provided to them. Experiments later on were found by, I think it was like the second or third most clever human that's ever existed. Once they found out what this stuff was, he performed experiments and found that using brain monitoring equipment, that they found that it's a cumulative drug, which means the more you take, the more it has an effect. And the last lot you took is still there, and the new stuff is having an added effect. But he said the effects were similar to explaining it like this. Like first, the two hemispheres decrease in information transfer and processing, and then they sort of synchronize, and when you've hit a certain threshold, your brain activity is through the roof, exponentially more than it was initially, and that the continued consumption of this steadied off, and as long as you continue to have it on a somewhat regular basis, that you were maintaining this background level, and your telomeres, well, he didn't know about your telomeres, but that you became more intelligent, that you're possibly just being able to utilize your entire brain. And that's why you would become a leader, because it affected you like this, and that you could then continue to be fed by this stuff and govern this, I can't say they're stupid, but the people whose brains aren't being worked on with the same chemicals, right? It's an added bonus and gives you human plus power. Ancient mythologies speak of the elixir of life in connection with gold and also some specific plants. Almost all ancient cultures placed the gods on a mountain or a high place. They all either ingest gold or liquid or white gold, which is white gold powder, or a plant extract to extend their life, and they all treat individual humans with indifference at best. But they seem generally to see us as chattel, as a resource to be used and abused. Orm, or orbitally rearranged monotopic elements, is not only important for life extension, but seems to be, in combination with mercury, a power fuel or explosive, which seems to have been harnessed by Nazi and later US and Soviet scientists in covert black ops programs. So, in particular, mercury, or red mercury, by the Nazis, or mercury, when you put a magnetic field around it, will turn into like a rotational toroidal shape. Extraordinary, and it gives off massive amounts of energy. So the Nazi bell comes to mind. This is the things we've discussed. Area 51, the possibility of this being used in extraterrestrial vehicles or in research. Red Mercury scare of the 1990s. This is ballotechnic explosive. There was an event that occurred. And also in combination with the Project Paperclip, which was the divvying up and discovery of all of these Nazi scientists to both the US and the Russians. They both had a similar project, but we know of the American name of it. It's called Project Paperclip, and you can find that everywhere, that information. So as a result, the people who were working, the Nazi scientists were working on all of this fantastic new equipment, like, jet engines, the single wing fighter, the Nazi bell, possibly a time traveling device, or an energy weapon, who knows, right? They got, and rocketry, for instance, for that matter, became, head of NASA. Werner von Braun became head of NASA, and it just continued the Nazi rocket program. It might even be a catalyst, certainly within the Nazi Bell program, that made time or interdimensional travel possible. That's red mercury. Maybe exploiting flaws within space-time, or the ability to open gateways to other dimensions or time streams with a physics that is suppressed within the mainstream, not fully understood and lost to most of us. The Nazis were also fascinated by ancient science and mythology. What did they know? What arcane knowledge did they have access to? Because we know that they traveled the world pre-World War II, going to every single place on the planet to try and find what there was. What could they learn? So most leading Nazis were fascinated by the occult, ancient civilizations, members of secret societies, and funded many expeditions and work groups and programs. Then the question is, why was Operation High Jump undertaken by the Allies in 1947? Is there a surviving ancient base in Antarctica now run by surviving Nazi scientists, possibly now allied across the planet, with every one of the major continents represented in Antarctica? See, Antarctica is the hardest place to travel to. Certain people are not allowed to travel to Antarctica. You can't just go there. And the big challenge is, if you do not believe this, try to go to Antarctica and not just on a guided tour. If you would try to go there on your own, you'll be denied. You'll be turned back. And when you do go there and not on a guided tour, you're not allowed to, there's places you just can't go to. And why would that be? If there's not supposed to be any borders there, or boundaries, or limitations, if it's just a continent of ice, I mean, why stop people from traveling around it? So if you know about Operation High Jump, there was 2 carrier groups that were sent down there post World War II. Now, of course, the rumor, not the facts, but the rumor is that the Nazis had gone in their submarines down the coastline of South America and fueled up and fooded up and then traveled to Antarctica. One of the jokes the Simpsons made was that Hitler is living in South America, in Argentina. But having said that, maybe there's some truth to that they did find some place. Hey SJ, by the way, that maybe they did find a base down there. Maybe they did find an opening in a subterranean race. Maybe they did find something down there. Maybe the rumors are true. Maybe those 2 carrier groups that did go down there suffered monumental casualties and came back limping back with their tail between their legs, having been exposed to something, some incredible force much greater than our current technology, because there are stories of UFOs, fleets leaving the Southern Ocean and flying up the South American coastline, and just before entering US space they hung a right and didn't. This is modern stories. This is like from, within 20 years from now, back in the past, greater than 2000. So, I mean, that's really interesting that there's a connection there to today. But why go down there? Now, Admiral Byrd spoke about going down there and saying how large it was, and he said there's a whole thing down there. He said he saw a hole in the ground, and he flew in, he met with them, flew out again, and then when he got back to the US, he stopped in on his way back. He stopped in through South America, and there's a story on him which we've had our friends decipher, translate back into English, and it's the same story. When he gets to the US, he's debriefed, and then he's put into a funny farm, an asylum, where he didn't last very long. And so there's got to be something that was experienced. Now, as a result of him going there and doing that, the 2 carrier groups left, and it was all under the guise of experimenting in the cold weather. Well, you could have done that in the Northern Hemisphere, to be honest. But one of the things he said was that there's a technology there that could fly from pole to pole so quickly that we couldn't defend ourselves. And I'm paraphrasing because it's you can look it up. So the question is it possible that some of their scientific breakthroughs may represent recovered or found ancient tech? The Shambhala, Shangri-La, Atlantis, maybe even Antarctica. Stardust Man, yes, Iron Sky. Did you know Iron Sky originally was was written about Antarctica, and through the process of filmmaking, it turned into the moon. Yes, absolutely. Yes, we've already done shows, Hyro, on that, on this very topic. So there's some show cycles to do with this. And I know I've only got a few minutes, so what I'll do, I'll leave it at that, and I'll just write in our show notes that we're at 4:04 for next week. And extraordinarily enough, we're at page 27 of 74. Crazy, right? So this is becoming like an almanac of how all of the ideas come together. Thinking about, just summing up today, thinking about this. They've actually made number 2, Iron Sky, but I think it's still in post-production, which is really funny. And look, that movie does touch on a whole bunch of really cool things, like one when they're talking about how do we stop them coming from the moon to Earth, and do we have anything in space? And of course they're reminded of that treaty where they weren't allowed to put weapons in space, and then all the countries start to admit that they've had that stuff in space for such a long time, that they're, you see them all activate. So all these like communication satellites are all completely weaponized. And all the weapons, and they turn them round and face them, because they've never done this before. They've all been faced with their enemies, but now they face it round at the common enemy. And the common enemy, I think, is the most powerful message of this. So how would we all react with a common enemy? I think that's something for us that's a take-home message for all of us. So look, I'd like to thank you. I've got 2 minutes left, but there's too much in the rest of it. Maybe I'll give you a little sneak peek. So the next show, next week, will be the gods, be they of terrestrial or outer space origin, have been around for a very long time, or at least we think so here at Shiny Side Out. Ancient ruins are a testament to our capability in the past, not you and I's capability. Oh, it's on Netflix. Oh, awesome. I've got to watch that. Maybe I'll watch it tonight. Creatively as well as destructively is what we've found in the past. So there's buildings that we can find today which appear to be completely demolished, and not because of human intervention, but because of something else. We've got massive stones, and like the Baalbek Temple. We've got the lintel at Göbekli Tepe. Sorry, we've got Göbekli Tepe, which is the whole, T-shaped rocks with everything. We've got Mohenjo-Daro. We've got the pyramids themselves. We've got molten glass layers. There's a whole bunch. That's the little tidbits for next week's show. And this is why. This is one of those reasons why I got into this, was not through just my own experiences, because I want to know more, but I was turned on by the idea from a lot of work that came just around my teen years, which was all about chariots of the gods. There's things around the planet, just open your eyes and have a look. And we did, and we found them. And now, since science can't truly explain their true origin, you've got to recognize that they're probably not ours. I'd like to say thank you very much for everyone listening. This has been show 403 of Shiny Side Out, part 4 of the hypothesis and the epiphany. Stay tuned to Revolution Radio. Stay right here for Jer Bear's show coming up any minute. We're about to hit the ad break at the top of the hour, at the end of the show, and we'll catch you next week, if my house isn't burnt down, for another Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. Loving the brand. Do your research. Try and buy some merch from us, from Zazzle. Type Shiny Side Out, 3 words, and you should get something come up. We got mugs and t-shirts and that. Find something nice for yourself. Anyway, peace out, everyone. Take care.